Let me ask you a question that goes straight to your heart. Is God's help really changing your life, or are you just talking about it? Are you living in the power of His promises or only hearing about them? Because when God truly steps into your life, things cannot stay the same. Real divine help produces real transformation. Many people say, "I believe in God," but they live in fear. They say, "I trust God," but they worry every night. They say, "God is with me," but they still walk like they are alone. This is not condemnation. This is awakening. God's help is not a story. It is not a theory. It is a living power that moves mountains, changes destinies, and breaks chains. When God helps you, He doesn't just fix your problems, He changes you. Your mindset shifts, your courage grows, your vision becomes clearer. You start walking with spiritual authority instead of spiritual confusion. Real help from God doesn't just calm your storm, it teaches you how to walk on the water. Some people pray but never expect results. They cry out but secretly doubt. But divine help is activated by expectation. When you truly believe God is helping you, your behavior changes. Your words change. Your decisions change. You stop settling for less because you know heaven is backing you up. God's help is visible in how you handle pressure. When trouble comes, do you panic or do you pray with confidence? When doors close, do you complain or do you trust that God is redirecting you? Help from God doesn't remove challenges. It gives you supernatural strength to overcome them. You will know God's help is real when you start seeing impossible doors open. Opportunities come from nowhere. People show up at the right time. Favor finds you in places where it was not supposed to exist. This is not luck. This is divine intervention at work. But let me be honest with you. God's help is not automatic. It responds to hunger. It responds to obedience. It responds to surrender. If you want God's help to truly change your life, you must create room for Him. You must let go of pride. You must silence fear. You must break agreement with doubt. When God's help touches your life, your past loses power. Your mistakes no longer define you. Your failures no longer own you. You rise with new strength and new identity. You start moving like someone who is protected, guided, and favored. And yes, the transformation may not happen overnight, but it will be undeniable. People will notice. Your environment will shift. Your mindset will expand. Your confidence will grow. When God helps you, stagnation becomes momentum. Weakness becomes strength. Confusion becomes clarity. So I ask you again, is God's help really changing your life? Not in theory, not in words, but in your habits, your mindset, your faith. Because when God's help is real, your life becomes a testimony. You don't just talk about Him, you demonstrate Him. And when that happens, you will not just survive, you will rise. Many people believe in God, pray to God, and even speak about God every day. Yet they never stop to ask themselves one honest question. Is God's help actually changing my life, or am I just going through religious routines? This is the first and most powerful truth that must be understood if your life is going to experience true transformation. God's help is not meant to be theoretical. It is not meant to be something that sounds good only in church or in motivational videos. It is meant to be real, visible, practical, and life-altering. When God truly begins to help you, your thinking changes, your habits change, your decisions change, and your results begin to change. Real change begins in the mind. When God's help touches your life, He does not start with your money, your problems, or your circumstances. He starts with the way you think. A transformed mind will always lead to a transformed life. If your thoughts are still filled with fear, doubt, insecurity, and limitation, then you must ask yourself whether you are allowing God to fully work in your inner world. God's help brings clarity where there was confusion. It brings courage where there was fear. It brings vision where there was hopelessness. When His help is active in your life, you no longer think like a victim of your environment. You begin to think like a person who is guided, protected, and empowered by divine wisdom. Another powerful sign that God's help is changing your life is the way you respond to challenges. Before divine help, problems easily break your spirit. Difficult situations make you panic, complain, and feel overwhelmed. But when God's hand is truly at work in you, your response to pressure becomes completely different. You become calmer under stress. You gain patience in moments of delay. You develop strength instead of despair. This does not mean you will never feel pain or struggle, but it means those struggles no longer control you. Instead of running from problems, you grow through them. Instead of breaking down, you rise up. God's help does not remove every storm, but it gives you power to walk through storms without losing your peace. Your daily behavior also reveals whether God's help is producing real change. When the Holy Spirit is actively guiding your life, your choices become more aligned with purpose. You begin to walk away from destructive habits, unhealthy relationships, and time-wasting activities. You start to value discipline, integrity, and self-respect, not because someone is forcing you, but because something inside you has shifted. This is the quiet but powerful work of God's help. It changes what you desire. It changes what you tolerate. It changes what you pursue. If your lifestyle looks exactly the same year after year, even though you pray and listen to motivational messages, then something is not being fully activated inside you. One of the most visible ways God's help changes your life is through your courage to act. Divine help is not meant to make you passive. It is meant to make you bold. You begin to step out of your comfort zone. You begin to trust the small inner nudges that lead you toward growth. You start taking steps toward your dreams instead of talking about them endlessly. God's help gives you the confidence to try again after failure. It gives you strength to stand when others walk away. It gives you vision when the path seems unclear. You stop waiting for perfect conditions and start believing that with God's help, you can move forward even when the road is uncertain. Another layer of true change is the peace you begin to carry. Life may still have pressure, responsibilities, and unexpected problems, but when God's help is active, an inner peace begins to settle inside your heart. You are no longer controlled by chaos. You no longer panic over everything. You begin to rest in the truth that you are not walking alone. This peace is not fake happiness. It is deep spiritual stability. It is the quiet assurance that no matter what happens, God is involved in your story. Real transformation also shows up in your relationships. When God's help is working in you, you become more patient, more understanding, and more forgiving. You stop reacting with anger so easily. You stop carrying bitterness and resentment. You begin to see people through a different lens, not because they suddenly became perfect, but because God softened your heart. He taught you empathy. He taught you wisdom. God's help does not just change your success, it changes your soul. If God's help is really changing your life, you will start to notice something powerful. You are no longer the same person you used to be. Your reactions are different. Your mindset is stronger. Your vision is bigger. Your faith is deeper. You become more resilient, more grounded, more focused. Not because life became easy, but because you became stronger. That is how you know God's help is real, when it begins to rebuild you from the inside out. God's help does not only come to make you feel good for a moment, it comes to transform you completely. Often people think that divine help should instantly remove all problems, but real spiritual change is deeper. It begins inside the heart, inside the mind, and inside your daily decisions. If God's help is truly changing your life, it will not only change your situations, it will change how you think, how you speak, and how you react. It will shift you from fear to faith, from doubt to confidence, and from surviving to overcoming. This is one of the clearest signs that God's help is active in your life. Your inner world begins to rise before your outer world changes. When God's help works, your mindset becomes stronger. You stop thinking like a victim and start thinking like a conqueror. You stop saying, "I can't," and start saying, "God is with me, I can." This internal shift is not small, it is powerful. Many people live under God's help, but never experience its full power because they never allow their thinking to change. But when you accept divine help, it rewires your thinking patterns. You begin to expect solutions instead of disasters. You begin to see opportunities instead of obstacles. You begin to believe that your life has purpose, direction, and divine backing. Another way God's help changes your life is through discipline. When His hand is truly upon you, you begin to lose appetite for things that are destroying you. You develop strength to walk away from habits that pull you down. You no longer feel comfortable with laziness, dishonesty, or compromise. Instead, you feel a strong inner push toward growth, excellence, and integrity. This is not human strength. This is divine transformation happening from within. You may not even notice it at first, but suddenly you are stronger than before, wiser than before, and more focused than before. God's help also changes your relationships. You become more patient where you used to be angry. You become more forgiving where you used to be bitter. You begin to carry peace where you once carried pain. This is evidence of real change. The presence of God in your life softens your heart and sharpens your spirit. You start responding with wisdom instead of reacting with emotion. This transformation is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming aligned with God's will, aligned with purpose, aligned with peace. Another powerful sign that God's help is changing your life is your resistance to giving up. Before, you may have been ready to quit when things got hard. You may have thought of walking away when the pressure increased. But when God's help is active, you develop endurance. You may feel tired, but you don't quit. You may feel stretched, but you don't surrender. Something inside you keeps pushing forward. That strength is not natural. That strength comes from divine help building endurance in your spirit. God's help also changes how you speak. Your words start carrying faith instead of fear. You begin to declare victory instead of defeat. You begin to talk about your future with confidence rather than doubt. Words are powerful, and when God's help touches your life, your tongue becomes an instrument of faith. You no longer speak death over your life. You speak life. You speak hope. You speak strength, and what you speak begins to shape what you experience. Another deep transformation happens in your decision-making. You begin to sense guidance even when things are unclear. You feel gentle warnings when something is not right. You feel peace when you are walking in the right direction. This is one of the strongest proofs that God's help is changing your life. You are no longer walking blindly. You may not always know the full picture, but you feel directed, protected, and guided. God's help does not make life easier overnight, but it makes you stronger every day. And that strength begins to accumulate. Over time, you look back and realize that you are not the same person you were before. Your pain didn't destroy you, it built you. Your delays didn't break you, they trained you. Your struggles didn't end you, they refined you. That is what divine transformation looks like. Sometimes the change is quiet. It doesn't come with noise or drama. It happens in silence. It happens in your thoughts, your habits, your discipline, and your courage. And one day, the world notices what God already molded inside you. They call it luck. They call it timing. They call it coincidence. But you will know the truth. It was God's help quietly changing your life day by day. The greatest proof that God's help is real is not that your problems disappear, but that you don't collapse under them anymore. You stand stronger, you think clearer, you believe deeper, you move forward wiser. That is real transformation. That is real power. That is real divine help working in your life. The third truth is that real change happens when you move from simply asking God for help to fully cooperating with the help He is already giving you. Many people pray and expect instant transformation, but they ignore the small instructions, gentle nudges, and quiet directions God places in their hearts. God's help is not always loud. Sometimes it is a whisper. Sometimes it is a quiet opportunity. Sometimes it is a door that opens slightly instead of wide. If you are waiting for your life to change, you must learn to recognize the subtle ways God is already moving in your daily life. One of the biggest reasons people feel stuck is because they are disconnected from God's guidance. They pray, but they don't listen. They ask, but they don't pause. They seek miracles, but they ignore discipline. Real change happens when you slow down your spirit and learn to recognize when God is speaking through your thoughts, circumstances, and inner convictions. That gentle feeling that tells you not to go somewhere, or to change your habits, or to speak kindly, or to take a risk, that is not random. That is God's help appearing in practical form. When you follow those instructions, your life begins to shift in quiet but powerful ways. God's help often shows up as discomfort. It may push you out of relationships that are wrong for you. It may pull you away from habits that are familiar but destructive. It may challenge your comfort zone and force you to grow when you would rather stay safe. Many people resist this part of God's help because it doesn't feel like a blessing at first. It feels like loss. It feels like pressure. It feels like confusion. But what you are really experiencing is divine rearrangement. God is removing what can't go where He is taking you. And if you cooperate instead of fighting it, you will see your life change in ways you never imagined possible. Another way God's help changes your life is through preparation. He doesn't just give you blessings, He prepares you for them. He builds your character, strengthens your mindset, and sharpens your discipline before releasing greater opportunities. This is why some seasons feel slow or boring or repetitive. You feel like nothing is happening, but in reality God is training you. He is teaching you patience, teaching you wisdom, and teaching you humility. The people who experience real transformation are the ones who don't quit in these silent seasons. They trust that God is working even when they can't see results. When you start cooperating with God's help, your mindset changes. You stop living like a victim and start living like a person under divine guidance. You stop reacting emotionally and start responding spiritually. You stop blaming people, situations, and timing, and instead begin to take responsibility for your growth. This is a powerful shift. It means you are no longer waiting for rescue. You are walking in alignment. And when alignment happens, progress becomes unstoppable. God's help also changes your life through people. Sometimes the help doesn't come through miracles in the sky, but through conversations, advice, criticism, and unexpected support. God sends mentors, friends, warnings, and even obstacles into your path to shape your direction. But if you are prideful, defensive, or closed-hearted, you can miss the help that is standing right in front of you. Cooperation means learning to listen, learn and grow from the people God places in your life, even when it hurts your ego. Consistency is another key to experiencing real change. Occasional prayer brings occasional results. Occasional obedience brings occasional progress. But daily cooperation with God brings continuous transformation. When you make God a part of your daily decisions, your daily thoughts, and your daily habits, you create a life that naturally aligns with His help. And when alignment becomes a lifestyle, Breakthrough stops being a rare event and becomes your normal experience. Finally, real change happens when you stop fighting God's process. Some people receive help but sabotage it by rushing, doubting, complaining, or trying to control everything. God's help is strongest when you trust Him, even when the path doesn't make sense. It is strongest when you obey without seeing the full picture. It is strongest when you surrender your need to control outcomes and allow God to shape your journey. When you cooperate with God instead of resisting Him, His help doesn't just touch your life, it transforms it. Your thinking changes, your habits change, your direction changes, your future changes. And one day you will look back and realize that the help you were praying for was already working in your life, shaping you, strengthening you, and leading you step by step into the destiny He prepared for you. In conclusion, God's help is not just something we hear about in sermons or read about in Scripture. It is meant to be experienced, lived, and witnessed in real life. His help is real, active, and available, but it begins to change our lives when we choose to trust Him completely, walk in obedience, and align our hearts with His will. When you stop relying only on your own strength and invite God into every area of your life, transformation becomes inevitable. Situations shift, doors open, peace replaces fear, and hope rises where there was once despair. The true evidence of God's help is not just in what you receive, but in who you become, stronger, wiser, more faithful, and more purposeful. When God's help is truly changing your life, it will not only lift you up, but it will also make your life a testimony that inspires everyone around you to believe.